Hey guys, Kelly here, and today I want to share with you my most recent reads. I actually got behind on my recent reads videos, so I had 9 books to talk about. So I'm going to split it into 2 videos, so you'll probably see next week my recent reads video. I'll be wearing the exact same outfit and looking exactly the same, but that's fine. So today I'm going to talk about 5 different books that I have read recently, starting with the one I like the least to the one I like the best. So all of these I ended up listening to as audiobooks, so I will put pictures of each of them. And the first one is Elevation by Stephen King, and the audiobook is also narrated by Stephen King. And I have to say, I didn't really love him as a narrator. I don't know, I mean, a lot of times when people aren't regularly professional narrators, even if they are authors, I don't always like it because they just aren't used to narrating. So I didn't prefer him as a narrator, and I just didn't really like this book in general. It's a short story. I gave it 2 stars. It's about a guy who keeps losing weight, but he doesn't look any thinner. So like when he stands on a scale, he keeps like progressively losing weight, and the way he moves and stuff, he could tell that he is losing weight, but he doesn't look smaller, and his clothes never change like size and all that stuff. So it's like a weird phenomenon, and that's all I want to tell you because it's a very short story, but I just didn't really like it. There wasn't enough really to draw me in, and then there was enough things that annoyed me that made me really kind of dislike it. And part of that is that, like, I've given Stephen King several tries. I've not really loved anything I've read by him, and a lot of times I just really don't like the way he writes women or describes them. So the main character's a guy in this, and the 2 women that are like kind of the main other characters are a lesbian couple, and every time he talks about them, he's describing them physically, and it is the epitome of the male gaze. He's always talked about the one about her beautiful legs and how they look in the outfit she's wearing. He even comments one time, the main character, about like, I'm not trying to have anything happen between us, but I still am going to notice how attractive they are. And I'm like, I just don't get why Stephen King feels like he needs to describe women this way as objects in basically every single book I've ever written by him, and this one is no different, even though the main theme of the book seems to be tolerance and getting along with each other. So it really felt out of place and bothered me the entire time. I did not enjoy this story. I read this for the Goodreads Summer Reading Challenge because one of the challenges was to read a book that had won a Goodreads Choice Award, and this won the award last year for horror, which doesn't make any sense because it's not a horror book at all. It's just a speculative fiction story. But it's Stephen King, so it won. I don't get it. I didn't like it. I might be in a minority, but not for me. The next book I listened to was The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo. I'm sure by now most everybody has heard of Marie Kondo and the KonMari method, and that's what this book is, the description of her method of decluttering. And I, obviously have watched her show and like know about her method and all that, finding joy in things and only keeping the things that spark joy in your life. But I never read the book, so I was like, oh, well, while I'm driving, I'll just put it on. And I did think there were some, helpful tidbits, things that I could get out of it for when I am unpacking in our new house, only picking things that I really love to have in my life, to keep those things and get rid of the excess. But a lot of things just made me laugh out loud and just like did not jive with me at all. And that is because she has this thing where she treats objects like they have feelings. Like she's always thanking her objects for a good job done, or she'll like talk about how you should take everything out of your purse at the end of the day so that the purse has a time to rest and relax, or that your socks are the only time they have to let loose and be free is when they're in the drawer and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I don't get on board with it, because like for me it almost felt like she was turning her possessions into sentient objects, which almost makes them equivalent to people or animals, and I just don't agree with that. I don't think our possessions should be at an equal level with living objects and or living people and animals. So I don't ever put any feelings into my objects. I get only keeping things that bring you joy, but I'm not going to talk to my objects. Sorry, not going to happen. The next book I read was Saint Anything by Sarah Dessen, and this is a young adult novel about a girl named Sydney whose older brother at the beginning of the story is going to jail, and so it's kind of her and her family dealing with the fact that her brother, who I believe is only like 18, 19, something like that, he was young, and that dealing with him being in jail, and also like how that affects the family dynamics at home, how her parents now treat her after her brother has done something that has put him into jail and all that. And so there's a lot of family plotline in this, which I really appreciated. Also at the same time, she is making friends with this family. The girl and the brother go to school with her, so she meets them, and so they're her age, but then also kind of gets pulled into her family and her mom and all that. So there's also kind of that family too. So there's two families, her own family, who seems to be kind of ignoring her because they're spending all their time focusing on their son who's in prison, and then this other family who's kind of her found family that is taking care of her and helping her out and really seeing her as a person during this time. And so I really enjoyed all of the like plot line that went along with family issues and all that, and then kind of her being seen and figuring out her identity, how it feels now with her anger at her brother and how she feels towards her family and all that. I thought that was great. The romance between her and the love interest is a really slow burn romance, so it doesn't take over the plot line, but it's still a really cute part of the plot, so I enjoyed that as well. The only thing that I didn't like about this book is that there's this kind of subplot that revolves almost around sexual harassment. There is a guy in her life that her family has kind of taken in as a family friend, but she feels really uncomfortable around him, the way he stares at her and talks to her, and she never tells that to her parents because she thinks, well, he's a family friend, my parents are going to listen to me, but she never vocalizes it, and so it's like the whole book she's feeling really uncomfortable and put in these situations where us as a reader are feeling, oh gosh, she's about to get assaulted, and so it made me feel really uneasy that she never like told anybody about how this guy was making her feel. And the way that plot line kind of got solved in the end just didn't seem like a good conclusion to it, or a good way of like ending that tension. So that subplot just kind of bothered me and made me really uncomfortable, but the rest of the book was really good and I would recommend it. This is the only Sarah Dessen I've ever read, so I don't know how it compares to her other books. This one seemed a little more serious than some of the plots I've read of her others, but maybe that's how a lot of them are, so I'll check out one of her other ones after this. The last two books I read were both 5 stars, and they were We Should All Be Feminists and Dear Ijeawele, or A Feminist Manifesto and 15 Suggestions. Both of these were written by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and I really enjoyed both of them. Like I said, 5 stars. They're very short, so if you want something that you can just pick up really quickly or listen to, both of them I listened to, and they were less than an hour, the audiobooks, and they were well worth listening to, even though they're only an hour. The way she talks, these are both like nonfiction feminist documents or essays, and both of them I thought she just has this really eloquent way of putting things that is so logical that I'm like, yeah, this is what we should be doing. And so I'll talk a little about each one. So I'm glad I read them in the order I read them in, because I think it would have been less impactful to have read Dear Ijeawele first, because that one's definitely better in my opinion than We Should All Be Feminists. But We Should All Be Feminists was from her TED Talk of the same title, and it just is saying why everyone should be a feminist, and not, it shouldn't be like a women's movement, that it should be both men and women are feminists so that we can actually reach gender equality, because if only women are making the push, then we're missing, you know, half of the population actually getting us towards gender equality. And I like how in this one she takes examples both from the United States and her home in Nigeria, so we kind of see the perspective from 2 different parts of the world and 2 different cultures. And also she takes some of the like arguments against gender equality and like refutes those and like say why those aren't really arguments against it, and kind of brings that down. And I just think that her ideas are just so, like I said, so logical. Like, oh yeah, of course we need to like change the way we raise both our girls and boys. it's great to teach girls that they should be strong and stand up for themselves, but at the same time, we need to be changing the way we raise our boys and not, you know, teaching them that they have to hide away their feelings and all that stuff, because that affects gender equality too. So I just really enjoyed the way she laid this out. The second book I read, was Dear Ijeawele, is a letter that she writes to a friend of hers, that her friend asked her for some ideas of how to raise her daughter as a feminist. So this is a letter to her friend, just laying out 15 suggestions about how to raise her daughter as a feminist. And I thought this one was really great, because since it's a little longer and it has actual 15 sections, I felt like it dived into the issues a little more and gave concrete examples of how we can, you know, be feminist and reach gender equality. So I really enjoyed this one, and especially I loved the section about sex. Like one of the, I don't remember which number it was, but she talks about how we need to teach our kids, both boys and girls, about sex from a younger age. As a mother of 2 girls, like almost everything she said in that section was what I've been talking about a lot to my other mom friends, and now I can be like, okay, if I'm not being eloquent enough, if you're not understanding what I'm saying, I'm going to give them this book as a suggestion to read, because so much of that section really was exactly what I've been telling people in my life about. You need to actually teach your kids about sex. Like, it's not, at this day and age, just teaching abstinence as the only possibility just doesn't work. I mean, you could tell them, like she says, that you would, rather than being adults and make those choices as adults, but that you need to be able to be open for your kids to come to you if they're, you know, same way with saying anything. If they're feeling like harassment from somebody or they're feeling uncomfortable around somebody, they need to be able to talk about that to you as a parent. And also she talks in that section about not equating our kids' clothing with morality. So not telling your daughter if she comes out in a short skirt that you look like a prostitute. Like, no, we should not be like equaling, because that it contributes to rape culture and how the girls are deserving it because of what they're wearing. And also boys shouldn't be hearing that. Like, if you have both a boy and a girl and your boy is hearing you say that to your daughter, then you're teaching your son that girls can just be treated as objects and that their clothing is what really matters about their personalities. So I totally agree with that. And then the last thing of that section, I know I'm going off, but I just love this part, was something that I actually recently was just talking to my best friend about, and that is about using the appropriate terms for sexual and reproductive organs so that they aren't this like bad thing. Like, especially female organs. Like, my kids are 4, my daughter is 4, and she knows what a uterus is, and she knows what her vagina is, and I have absolutely no problem with teaching her those words. And other moms are like when I talk about those and use those words, it seems like other moms are shocked. And I'm like, why? Why is it any different to teach our girls their appropriate reproductive organs instead of like making up, like saying, oh, you grew in my tummy? Like, no, you didn't. You grew in a uterus. Like, it's just a word. We wouldn't like prevent our kids from knowing the word lung or stomach. So why would we make it seem like female organs are like bad and we shouldn't talk about them? I'm getting on my soapbox, but this is something like I'm really passionate about. Both of my kids are adopted, which you probably have heard before, and when they ask about where they came from or about their birth mothers, we specifically say, you know, you grew in another woman's uterus. It just becomes part of the conversation. So when it comes time to actually talk about sex, she has the words to know what the different organs are, what parts of your body do, and how it leads to sex and leads to babies. It just makes sense to teach them the real words for things. Like, and then just to hear people be like shocked that I would say those words, it just perpetuates the thing that like parts of the female body are bad, and we should not be teaching our girls that. So getting off my soapbox now, that I just like everything she said in this manifesto. I was like, yes, that's how I want to raise my girls. And if I had boys, I'd be raising them that way too. I just happen to only have girls. So I would highly recommend both of them. Listening to them are great. We Should All Be Feminists is actually narrated by the author, which is great because I think her voice and just the way she speaks and holds herself is just so amazing. So if you don't want to listen to the book, watch her TED Talk, whatever. Like, I just think that she's amazing, and it makes me want to like read all of her novels now. So that's all I'm going to talk about now. If you would like to chat about any of these books further, go ahead and leave a comment. Thanks. Bye.